Greetings fellow mammals. Originally I wanted to make attachment videos like I did for 2042 before I dive into the weapons, but unfortunately according to my contacts it seems to be impossible to extract the necessary data. That means any information I could provide in such a video would entirely be made up of guesstimates, and that's just not my thing. So instead we will talk about something that doesn't require data mining today, sites. And the reason I want to talk about them is A, because I need to complain to someone about the shitty ones, and B, I might actually have some smaller tips and tricks here and there to share with you. Also, it's just annoying having to click on every single one of them just to see how they actually look in game. Believe me, I had to do that for this video and it sucks. So this is also somewhat of a showcase, I guess. That's enough chit chat though, let's get into it. In total there are 35 different options. However, not all of those are accessible to every weapon type. And to make it even more confusing, occasionally there are canted iron sights, canted reflex sights, and for some higher zoom scopes even 3 different integrated switchable ones. To keep it simple though, the general rule of thumb is that anything above a 5x zoom is reserved for the DMRs and snipers. There is a bit more to it to be fair, but if you are that interested, check out my scribbles. I just added a whole new page just for that stuff. You should find all the answers you need right there. What's relevant for this video is how do they look, which ones are usable, which ones should be avoided, and are there maybe ways to save some points. After all, we do have a build budget, so the cost matters. And of course I will talk about the iron sights too, my favorite topic. But now let's simply start this off by taking a look at the lowest zoom options. The 1-axis. We have 3 choices here. On the left, the mini flex, my personal favorite. Simple dot, big window, thin borders. Just perfect. In the middle, the RMR, slight tint, tighter window, thicker borders, all in all not horrible, but why would I use this when I have the mini flex? And on the right, the OSA 7 or OSA 7, I don't know. Completely different approach. Green lines and arrow, round window, very thin border and lots of space towards the bottom. Technically also a really good option, but personally I dislike the green arrow things, so it's a no for me. Moving up slightly to the 1.25 axis, here we have the CQRDS with those little Batman ears. I don't like this one, the borders are just way too thick, the window is too small, and again there is no point in using this over the miniflex, especially because 1x or 1.25x really doesn't make any difference whatsoever. But in the middle we do have another one of my favorites, the ROS. Very clean, somewhat thin border, round window, simple red dot. Some of you might even prefer this over the miniflex just because you can see more towards the bottom, and I can understand why. I just personally prefer having no zoom at all for most of my guns. Finally on the right, the E02 Pro. Very thick borders, completely useless additional red lines, but the window is very large and the dot itself is pretty clean. Not a great choice, but there will be much worse. For example, among the 1.5 axis, the rocks makes the start on the left, very tight window, blue tint, thick borders, and then there is also additional stuff just blocking the view for no reason. This is just bad. The SU231 in the middle isn't much better if you ask me. The window and reticle itself is fine, but the rest of the side blocks so much of your screen, it's just completely unusable in my opinion. An entire squad could hide behind those bars while you are shooting at the guy in the middle. The 1P87 on the right has the exact same problem, and I'm honestly not sure if it's worse or better. The window is a bit larger, so that is good, but the frame is even thicker, so that is bad. I don't know, I don't like any of these. Luckily, the 1.75 axis have some usable options. The AP2 on the left seems a bit weird at first because of its square-like shape, but it's not that bad the longer you look at it. The frame is okay, the reticle is clean, the window is a bit narrow, okay, but all in all, it's fine. The ROM in the middle though, now this one is just great. Relatively thin frame in relation to the window size, simple red dot, ever so slightly tinted, this one just works. On the other hand, the 3VZR on the right is just all the same things, but worse. Smaller window and bigger frame, especially towards the sides, which is the worst part to have chunky bar set. I don't know why anyone would ever use this instead of the ROM. And now the choices thin out a little. For the 2x zoom level we only have two options. The CCO with a noticeable blue tint, a very chunky frame towards the right but overall still a usable side picture. And then the R4T or red scope, again with some irritating additional lines on the reticle and an extremely chunky frame. Not my thing at all, but to be honest I wouldn't use either of these because the next one is just so much better. And it's only a small jump up to 2.5x. The BF2M. Very large window, mostly thin frame, extremely clean reticle. This one is just great. For anything lower mid-range I just use this. I don't even think about the 2x's. And if you want even more zoom you could pick the 3x Baker. But personally I don't really like it, and I'm not quite sure why. I think it's because the frame is quite thick again and that red dot is somewhat blurry and a bit too large for my taste. If you are looking at someone who is prone with this, that red dot will almost entirely cover them at this range. Not ideal. The 3.5x SDO doesn't have the same problem, because this one has this weird 3/4 circle going on, but on this one I dislike having all that other shit on my reticle. And having the cap on the left also doesn't help with visibility. Also, both of these last two options are in a zoom range you don't really need from my experience. The 2.5x can cover these distances still good enough, and if you really need more zoom I would instead go for the next option. The 4x PVQ31. This one is just incredibly clean. Enormous window, no useless dots in the middle, relatively thin frame. I just wish the arrow was a bit slimmer, but you can't have everything I guess. Overall this is one of my favorites though. And if this is still not enough zoom for you when it comes to mid-range fights, then maybe you will prefer the 4.5x LDS. You might think I dislike this one because of the giant black cross, but surprisingly I actually find it to be quite helpful. At this zoom level the recoil of most weapons will feel significantly higher, and having that black cross there helps to center it faster. You can't really lose the center out of sight because you can always rely on it being in the middle of that cross. So for weapons like the SVK for example, this side works great. Another half step up we get to the 5x scopes. These are the highest single zoom optics that are available to all primaries. On the left we have the ST Prism. I don't like this one as much because in comparison to the 4.5x we just had, the window is way smaller and I also don't like the tint. Otherwise it's fine I guess. On the right though, the SFG2. I strongly believe there is a goblin hiding somewhere in the ceiling of that office in Stockholm, and when the lights turn off and everyone leaves for the night, he comes out of his hidey hole and adds these retarded extra lines on the scopes, just to fuck with us. I don't have any other explanation for this bullshit. Anyhow. We now enter the realm of the DMRs and snipers. For the 6x zoom level we have two options. The SVPS, which once again fell victim to that nocturnal weirdo, but otherwise I think it's okay. Although I feel like that the dot in the middle is also, once again, a bit too big and blurry. Technically usable, but not great. The SSDS on the right though is just miles ahead. Very thin lines, slight dots on the line for drop adjustments and red color to set it off. Yes, there is an annoying amount of useless pluses and other dots on the bottom there, but thankfully they are all really small and thin, so you can just ignore that stuff. Which then makes for a very clean scope overall, the clear winner in this comparison. Two steps higher we get to the 8x scopes. Another two choices here. The NFX, which is okay, I guess, although I would prefer it if they got rid of the red lines and just kept the plus in the center. And on the right, the LERT, or LERT, I don't know, which in comparison is just way cleaner. Really thin lines, really small dots, this one is just great. And last but not least for the single zoom optics, the 10x RVPS. Again, not bad, actually quite nice, but since this is the 10x scope and that implies you would use this for ultra long range sniping, that glow on the red dot is a bit excessive and can obscure targets at those ranges, so that holds it back a bit in my book. Apart from that, for regular sniping, good stuff. All of these single zoom optics cost 10 points by the way. The variable ones we will look at now cost a bit more. The 124x, for example, costs 20 points, which makes it an outlier actually, because all other variables cost 25. And this SU230 is basically just a copy of the 4.5x LDS. Looks almost identical. But of course here we have two different zoom options, 1x and 4x. If you ask me, this is a really decent choice if you want something for both close and mid-range. Next up, for 25 points, the 125x NGFC. This thing fucking sucks. But why would I say that? Well, mostly because the UI team of this game is apparently severely understaffed. If you haven't noticed it by now, there isn't a single UI element anywhere on your screen that tells you what zoom level you are currently on or how many there even are. But sorrow, why would that matter? It's a 125x. I mean, surely you can differentiate those two zoom levels just from looking at them. Well, yes. The problem is, it's not 2. There are actually 5 steps on this scope, and when you spawn with this thing, it doesn't even start on the lowest one. No, it starts right in the middle. And if you don't know how many steps it even has, which you can't unless you count them yourself and remember on which one you currently are, which you would have to because neither the menus nor the in-game UI tells you this shit, you will inevitably switch one too many times, and then you have to cycle through all of them again, which is something you do exactly 2 times in a normal match, and then you get so annoyed at this that you use something else. But granted, maybe that's just a personal experience. But now let's actually look at the damn thing. On the lower levels I would say it's acceptable, but on these higher ones for long range you will really notice that not only has the retarded goblin struck again, it's also insanely fucking blurry for no reason. This sucks. And especially for sniping. This is completely useless. Even more so because we have no settings where we could change the reticle colors, which by the way is surely another great legacy feature to be missing, especially for all those people with color blindness, but I guess they just have to eat shit nowadays. To make it even more fun, let's move on to the next variable one, the MCCO126X scope. And before I show you, why don't you guess how many zoom levels this one actually has? I'll give you a hint, it's not 2. Make your guess? Great. You are wrong. It's 8. Yes, 8. Who in the fuck needs 8 zoom levels? And look at them. Half of these look almost identical. Who needs all of this? Dice, please, why? At least this is the worst offender when it comes to the switching, but still. 8? What the fuck? And then if you look at the thing, it's actually rather good. Thin lines, slight ticks for drop-off, but of course Mr. Greenskin had to draw his favorite shape on it again, and unfortunately his extended family member Blurzo also had to chime in again and add blur on top of that too. Great. Oh, we get another 126X option by the way, the DVO. This one comes with a laughably low 4 zoom level switch, but at least Big G is all over it again, and now his twisted cousin Blurzo has reached full potential and just made his favorite croissant shape completely solid this time. That stupid ass circle will literally just cover entire enemies at range, and the question why the fuck it's even there in the first place is of course redundant. 2 more. The SM rifle is a 228X with 4 levels, and this one is theoretically okay, but on the highest zoom, which you would want for sniping, that cross is so thick and not transparent at all, it once again just covers the entire enemy. Garbage. The 1P88 Uplast. This one has a charming 6 zoom switch going from 3 to 10x and wherever in between, and there is indeed a lot of annoying clutter on here. But if you just focus on the center, it is actually usable for sniping. I would however prefer the regular 10x over this one. And that brings me to the part where we can save points. You might be thinking, well, I want a 10x, but I need something for mid-range too, so I guess I have to use those bad variable scopes and just keep cycling through all those useless steps in between. Well, thankfully not. There is another way. More secret. A dark way. With the sniper scopes comes the option to add an integrated additional zoom level, either 2, 3 or 4x, which all cost 10 points. So you can get a 10x scope with an integrated 4x for 20 points. Not only is this 5 points cheaper, it also means you get better reticles and you only have to press the switch once. Isn't that amazing? And by the way, if you want something switchable for non-sniping but you don't like the canted iron sights or the canted reflex either, then I can tell you that there are some scopes that have access to a 1x piggyback option. For example, my 2.5x I like so much. If you equip this one and go into the slot again, you now have an option to add a reflex sight on top of it, which then looks like this. So even for that type of stuff, there are cheaper, more convenient solutions. But before I forget about it, we haven't looked at the thermals yet. There's one with a 1.5x zoom, the Grim, on the left, and there's one with a 3x zoom, the Pass 35, on the right. And for DMRs and snipers, there's even a 6x zoom version, the TSHD. Now, about the first two. The Grim is pretty great, and although all of these cost 25 points, just like the variables, at least here you actually get some functionality for your buck. The 3x, however, is trash in my eyes. The window is way too small and the model itself is just a giant slab of inconceivable shoot-up dog toy. This might be the worst offender when it comes to spatial awareness around your target. The sniper one, on the other hand, is one of the cleanest scopes overall. Yes, it does have those useless additional lines, but at least they are really thin and have no glow. Most of the time you don't even notice them. I actually wish we had this exact scope as a regular option without the thermal. Or maybe make it switchable where you could turn it on and off. That would be cool too, and I know they could technically do that because the drone already has that functionality. Well, anyhow, to finish up the scope section, let me pull up my favorites again, the ones I would recommend using, and then we will have a deeper look into the iron sights. Can't forget about those now, can we? So, for close range, with absolutely no zoom at all, the Miniflex or OSA 7, at least if you don't mind the green arrow. With negligible zoom at 1.25, the ROS, for lower mid-range, the AP2 and the ROM, both at 1.75, as well as the BF2M at 2.5x. For higher mid-range, the PVQ31 with 4x and the LDS with 4.5. On DMRs and snipers, for long range, the SSDS 6x, the LERT 8x, the RVPS 10x, and of course, overall, if possible, the Grim 1.5 thermal and the TSHD 6x thermal. Now, finally, iron sights. As you know, my favorite topic. You won't remember half of these 1 minute after you watch this video, so I just want to recommend doing something. Whenever you start a new weapon build, the first thing you should do is check if the iron sights are usable for you. That could potentially save you 5 points. At least on everything else than snipers, those are a bit special. Iron sights on snipers cost 15 points and they also get no sway reduction like they usually do. Instead, they have another special ability. When you use a sniper rifle, every single sight has scope glint. Yes, even the Miniflex. However, the iron sights don't. Oh, and by the way, iron sights are 1.5x, not 1x zooms. But honestly, I don't think most people would want to snipe with low zoom optics anyway, so this seems like a really niche bonus. That also means though there is no point in using lower zoom optics unless you specifically want to. You won't get rid of scope glint that way, so if you can go all out anyway, might as well pick the 8x or even 10x I guess, but that's just me. Before I get lost in a sniper talk though, let's refocus. I will not go over the iron sights in order of category, but by how good or bad I think they are. I took a screenshot of every single one and I then ranked them into 5 folders. Good, okay, bad and horrible. And one of them even got its own folder which I fittingly named Abomination. How fun. Obviously this is all extremely subjective, but I will make you listen to it anyway. So here goes nothing. Let's start with the good options. In this folder I have 5 screenshots. Some shapes are shared across multiple weapons, which is also the case here. The M433 for example shares this really clean iron sight style with the L85A3 and the M417A2. All are good options in my opinion. The other 2 good picks are on the SG5A3R and the M87A1 shotgun. Doesn't get much cleaner than that. Now the acceptable ones. You know I'm picky when it comes to irons, so most of these will probably be just fine for you, but I just have an increased aversion to these things. Still, everything in this folder is something I would at least consider using if it meant I could afford some other, more important attachment for it. So here we go. The M277, DRS, IAR and M250 all share a rather clean one. The AK4D and the PW5A3 also have essentially the same one. The M2010 ESR and the PSR2, nothing I would use for sniping, but I guess it's not too bad. And then the rest in the AR category, the B36A4 and SOAR 556 Mark II also have quite good ones. For the carbines, the M4A1 also has a decent one. And then the SMG category, the PW7A2 and UMG40 are also quite fine. The UMG40 actually has two different iron sight versions. This is the better one. And last but not least, the SVK 8.6. Probably not a weapon you would want a 1.5x zoom on, but still, these are usable. Now we are getting to the bad ones. Let's get these flat top ones out of the way first. AK205, RPKM, SVDM, SV98 and 18.5 KSK. No space to the bottom and the sights are so high they will cover anything on the peripheral the second you fire the first shot. Not good. Same problem the pistols have. I dislike all of them. Here they are: P18, ES 5.7, M45A1, M44, GGH22 and the M357 trait. Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, the KTS 1000 Mark 8 and the M35 EMR are also in this folder, but now let's unload my dogshit folder. I'll just go through these from left to right category wise now, because I honestly don't really care at this point. TR7, Cord 6P67, NVO 228E, GRTBC, QBZ192, SOAR 300SC, SGX, UMG40, the bad version, USG90, KV9, SCW10, SL9, L110, M60, M240L, LMR27, Mini Scout, M1014. Woo, almost done. If you paid really close attention, you might know which one is still missing. The first place of abhorrent design goes to the 123K. Holy shit, does this thing fucking suck. Jesus Christ. Ugh. Well, I feel better now. Thanks for sharing this burden with me. If I missed any mechanics or ways to save points when it comes to this topic, please let me know in the comments. And that's it for today. Thank you for your time, and I will see you on the battlefield. Sorrow, out.